welcome, Mike, and thank you for coming onto the Precious Pod today. I think it's very timely, right? Silver's coming to the fall. It's up, I think at one point, up 85%. We haven't had a podcast dedicated to silver, so you're the person. And yeah, we're going to uncover India, investment demand, industrial. I think there's a lot to unpack there. But first, let's start with, you ran the silver champagne table at the LBMA. You've been on the road a ton. We've just had the silver metals focus release, the outlook last night. So just give us a sense of, some of the takeaways at the conference and over the last few weeks, what people are talking about in silver.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. As our newest member to the Silver Institute, MKS PAMP, we appreciate your support.
Absolutely.
And you were quite busy, obviously, in Kyoto as well. I saw you doing a lot of interviews, but we did indeed host a silver roundtable.
Yeah.
The champagne was flowing, the conversation was vibrant. We did some interesting things. We made name badges for people where they sat. They weren't their actual names. We had like Warren Buffett, who bought 130 million ounces of silver in 2008 or 7. No, 1997. And we had the person who founded Goldschmidt. We had the Silver Surfer. We had Silver Screen. We had fun little things. So we tried to be a little bit more unique.
Yeah.
But the topic really centered around tariffs, and I'm assuming we'll get to that later on. Silver at that point had not been officially designated as a critical mineral. So that has happened. We can talk about that later on. But it was really well attended. I tell you what was really attended, the roundtable, was the gold, not physical gold, but digital gold.
Yes.
That was packed.
Right, yeah.
So one day we're going to get there.
We'll get there in silver and gold or in precious metals, but those worlds are definitely colliding for sure. So for me, it's fundamentals and silver, right? We've had 5 straight years of deficits, like really decent sized deficits. And silver, it performed, but it really could have done a lot more the last 5 years. So why is this year different? Why suddenly, and we see the same with platinum, was this the year that deficits actually mattered, where we've seen a big re-rating in pricing?
Right, and it is unique in the fact that, as you mentioned, it is our 5th year. It's a smaller deficit this year at about 95 million ounces, but it's projected to continue into 2026, and we'll see what happens in 2027.
Right.
Fact of the matter, there are just no new mining projects online. Nothing's coming down the pike. There are some new veins that are being discovered at existing projects that may come to fruition as we go through 2026, but we're still projecting it. And the mind-blowing thing here is that if you look at the 5 years and you add it up, it's about 820 or so million ounces. That's equal to probably 1 year of typical mine supply.
Right.
So this deficit does matter, but why is silver caught up, and why is silver sort of like the buzzword in the industry today? Well, gold has had a fantastic year. It has set, 30, 40 successive intraday records throughout the year. We hit one, all right? And it was the first one since 1980. But it's significant. And it's significant in the fact that so many people have been waiting for it to cross the $50 mark. And quite frankly, we're at 52 and change today. We got up to 54. We didn't quite do the double top yesterday, but we got there. We came down a little bit. But has a new floor been set for silver? Is there a 41, 42 floor?
Right.
Which was rather optimistic for us to even think so at the beginning of this year, given the fact that the average price last year was about $28 and change.
Right.
So I think the run-up in gold has had some effect. I think investors are really looking at the deficit. They're looking at some of these new industrial uses that are coming online for silver. And quite frankly, geopolitics. I know it's an overused term, but we have a lot of issues in the world, and people are looking to diversify their portfolios, and they're looking at hard assets like gold and silver.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head there. I think, for me, one of the biggest takeaways from LBMA is we spoke a lot about what inning are we in the gold cycle? Are we in the 5th inning or the 8th inning? And I sort of want to turn that on its head and what inning are we in the debasement cycle? Because I think we're very early, and if that's the case, that's why we're seeing interest flow, so this overflow interest from gold into platinum, into silver, and some of these other real assets who are a little more high beta and have a good story if you think growth is not going to plummet. So on that topic, we talk. You mentioned industrial demand. It really has underpinned the silver rally, right?
Right.
Within that, is it PV? What sort of subsectors are pretty hot?
Sure.
Which ones should we be looking at, and how should we, look at industrial demand? Because investment we can track pretty well with ETFs and COT, and you have a good sense in terms of coin and bar demand. But the industrial sector is a little more murky. So, how do you look at that?
Well, we set a record in 2024 with respect to industrial demand, and we're going to slip a little bit this year. But that has to do with the global economy, all right? I mean, not everything is firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
It's a small little slip. I believe our slip here on industrial demand is less than 2%. So it's not significant by any means. When you look at photovoltaics, it wasn't even on the map in 2009. We weren't even really following it.
Right.
But look at the growth it's had since then. The problem with silver and photovoltaics is they're really trying to thrift out of it. And they've been doing this rather successfully since 2013. At these price points, they're even trying doubly hard to figure out, do we use less silver? Is there another metal?
Copper,
Unfortunately, if you're building a solar field and you want a 20-year lifespan, you're going to have silver.
Right.
Because it is the best thermal conductor of electricity. It holds the sunlight, it captures it, it converts it into energy, which is the end result and the goal of solar. So we slipped a little bit this year with respect to demand for silver. It was because of thrifting.
Okay, the thrifting.
Metals Focus last night interestingly said that 2026 will probably be a better year for silver. After I left the LBMA, I went to China for the China International Silver Conference, and we were in a city called Wenzhou, and Wenzhou is a very technical-based city, and one of the companies I visited was a company called Fudar.
Okay.
And they make solar paste and they make solar panels, and among a whole host of other electronic components that utilize silver. And to look at the wafer and to hold the wafer in my hand, which was my first time, is quite astounding. Yeah. You can't see the silver.
Right.
But you see a film. You see, and you can see it. Okay. Yeah. So what they're doing now, they're doing top con. So they're putting thin layers of silver paste on the front and on the back of the panel, which is what they used to do when the solar panels first came out. Then they discovered another technology where they would only do one side of the panel.
Right. Okay.
But now they're back to two, but they're using less silver. They've been able to dilute the silver to a point where it works, and that's what they want. They want it to work, but they want it to be cost effective. Yeah. So we think there's a really rampant, not a rampant, but there'll be a movement upwards in 2026 with respect to silver being used in solar. It's being used in electric vehicles, okay? So the more complex a vehicle becomes with respect to its safety features, infotainment systems, and those are all, by the way, going down to ICE vehicles and mid-level market cars. Yeah, It's not just the Lexus or the BMW or the brand new Mercedes.
Oh, good point.
Most consumers want the rear view camera. Okay. Most consumers want an infotainment screen, and that's all done with solar. With silver. And quite frankly, it's a win-win for the industry. We're seeing more and more electric vehicles come to the market. We have, as I mentioned, a little bit of a slowdown in industrial production in the United States and elsewhere. But it's not too significant where it's going to affect the bottom line for silver. But what we really have to keep our eye out on in terms of new technologies coming down the pike, or I should say it's not quite new, but data centers that are used to help power AI.
Right.
And their energy requirements are incredible. Yeah. I live in Virginia. And if you're driving out to Dulles Airport, there's data centers everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
It's not the king captain of all data centers, Virginia, but it's darn near close.
Yeah. Right.
And those energy requirements are going to require more and more silver.
Yeah, I think silver again, that's a big attraction for it as an investment class. It's not just a pure hedge against the dollar. It wears that industrial hat, and there's certainly a growth area there. I want to talking about industrial, but India, it goes hand in hand, and I think that's been the region this year for silver. Like if I had to think of one, it's taking in physical silver and it's not leaving. Right. And you speak to various stakeholders, and I just, what's going on in India? Is it investment? Is it industrial? Are they picking up the slack in PV out of China? Is that just capacity redirecting? Is it silverware? How are you looking at India and just what's been driving that?
It's an interesting
demand?
Country, and I've been 3 times. So 3 years ago we started sponsoring the India Silver Conference in India. And it's held in different regions of the country, usually in the outskirts, close to Mumbai or Delhi. But quite frankly, you have 500 people. Most of them are locals. Most of them are native Indians. They have some foreigners come to the conference. But it's quite spectacular to see how that country is historically been devoted to gold and silver. Right. And silver is really taking the big chunk of the pie these days. Right. It's a huge industrial consumer of silver. They are just getting into the investment side with respect to electric exchange traded products.
Yeah, the ETF demand has been pretty
It's
astounding.
Robust. Yeah. It's incredible. They're really into digital silver.
Okay.
And what we notice in India is you have a younger investor, a younger person, which is great because that lasts hopefully throughout their lifetime.
Right, and it doesn't take away from gold.
No, it doesn't take away from gold at all.
Yeah.
Gold's still the top dog there, but silver is really making a play in that country. On the industrial side, as I mentioned, they're a big consumer of silver with respect to industry. Yeah. On the investment side, they are one of the top 4 countries with respect to retail silver demand. Yeah. Coin and bars.
Yeah.
And they're very, very important. And they really do set the standard for silver jewelry and silver tablewares. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So look at as they go. We have a 4% drop in silver jewelry this year. That's mostly due to price sensitivity with the rupee. Yeah. And about an 11% drop this year with respect to silverwares. Okay. So, but what they're doing there with their silverware and with their jewelry is just fascinating.
Right. And I think even though you're seeing mild, I mean, it's not even near the drop in gold jewelry demand. I mean, 4% is small. It's being picked up by investment, right? I think India ETF demand is up like 50 million ounces year to date,
it's incredible.
Which is really astounding. Investment. There's been strong growth in coin and bar ETFs globally. We talk about US, Germany, India, Australia, our top 4 big coin and bar markets. And is it firing on all cylinders? Do you think there's an area that
we noticed last night that there's going to be a small dip with respect to investment on the retail side for next year. So it's not huge.
Globally or
globally? Globally,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we're looking at a very small, with respect to physical investment, about a 3%, 4% drop. So, and that's coming off of a pretty bad year in 2024. Okay. We're seeing a lot of people sell back into the market, especially in the United States. And I know the United States has had some challenging times with respect to coin and bar demand. But India is doing well. Australia is doing great. We're confronted with a VAT tax in Germany, which is not, gold is not subjected to it, but silver for some reason is. Yes. Right. So that affects that market a little bit. But where we're really seeing the growth this year is in ETPs. And it's we're projecting this year will be higher than the record year in 2020. Okay. So we had more silver go into ETPs by the first half of this year than we did all of last year.
Yeah. Look, it's certainly a bullish indicator, but it's very different to industrial demand, which kind of stays off market for a longer time, or jewelry. ETFs can come back to market pretty quickly, right? Like
Yes.
it's so. I mean, do you think there's exit risks, or do you think would you say the market's too frothy given the inflows in ETFs? And do you see if even a portion of that, half of the inflows year to date, unwind? Does it make you worried about price action? Like, how do you look at that?
Yeah, it would make me worry about that. But fortunately, at this point today, as where we sit, we haven't seen that, right?
Yeah.
So it's been very solid. It's been a sustained growth period in those products. The ETF SLV was started, next year will be the 20th anniversary of that. Came out in April of 2006. And the growth not only in that ETP, but in PSLV and some of the other products overseas is quite fascinating. And I was somewhat struck by the fact that when we will be talking about silver squeeze and storage issues and movement of silver. When you look at silver held in London, 75% of that is dedicated to ETPs. You can't touch it.
Right. No,
right?
it's
so they're
allocated,
accounted for, it's allocated, so it leaves you a small free float. And that number is growing, and we suspect it will continue to grow for the next month and through the end of this year, and hopefully as we get into mid-2026.
Right, and it goes back to the, what inning are we in the debasement cycle? And again, if it's in the early inning, then I think...
It's interesting. I had a conversation with someone last night, and we were talking about what inning are we in, or using a football analogy with respect to the silver price.
Yeah.
And all these factors were brought up, the debasement, the printing of money, the QE, everything, the debt, the global debt that every country is facing, the personal consumer debt, credit card, automobiles. I mean, repos are at their highest in the United States than they've ever been.
Yeah.
Credit card debt is through the roof. It's never been this high. And then you look at the government debt, okay, $38 trillion and more. We'll probably hit $40 trillion by the end of the year.
Right.
And it's just mind-boggling. And at what point do governments start to recognize that this is an actual serious issue? Yeah. But when you talk about innings or football games, someone last night said we're just completing the first quarter of a football game with respect to silver's strength and price.
Right. So, I mean, on that note, we've spoken a lot about demand. Supply, 80% of silver is mined as a byproduct to gold and copper, etc. What price do we need in order to get that supply response, which is sitting? We got the metal. It's sitting in ETFs. It's sitting in exchange warehouses. It's sitting in private holders. It's there, but it's not coming back to market fast enough, given where lease rates are and given where price is. So, what price do we need for a supply response? Where do you see that sustainable supply response coming from?
Well, it's a great question, and I wish I had a concrete answer for you. We put out a report earlier this year on the price sensitivity of above ground stocks.
Okay.
And it talks about the various factors and when does mobilization begin, at what price. Well, we're seeing it now, right? We're seeing it at $50 silver. We're seeing a rush. Maybe not because of the silver price, because the ongoing threat of tariffs, which we had earlier in the year, that's still not off the table with Section 232 and critical minerals. So we're in a holding pattern there.
Yeah.
But we saw all the silver come from London and other places to New York, along with gold, and then it all went back.
Right.
And then they had to send it all back again, just recently because of the squeeze in London.
Right.
That was, $48, $50 silver, and that's kind of what we're seing today.
Yeah, so it does. Metal is flowing back, right? And we've seen, silver lease rates spiked to like 35%. They come back down. They're about 5% now on a 1 month basis. But the curve is still pretty structurally tight, and we've seen 50 million ounces move from CME into London. But for me, it's not enough, and it's not happening at a fast enough pace. Why isn't metal moving? Are there bottlenecks? Is it logistical issues? Is it fear of tariffs? for me, I think metal should be alleviating. Metal goes to where it's best treated quickly,
Right.
but it's not happening in this case, this year in silver. Why?
I think one of the reasons is there are so many challenges. We just another one of our new member companies is Ava Global, and they're a logistics company, and I just did a podcast with their chief operating officer last week, and what Daniel said is that there are so many challenges in moving metal. Okay, I mean, there's insurance costs, there's security, of course, there's getting silver out of a location or out of a mine site to a refinery, and from there, where does it go? It's just hate to use the word, it's a logistical nightmare. Okay, but with respect to your question, I think that I think that the CME has some Byzantine rules with respect to, and I don't know, I'm not sure they're their rules, but you can't put a new location, a storage facility. It has to be within 150 miles of New York. And I know soon in the United States there's going to be legislation that would sort of get rid of that 150-mile parameter and allow silver to be stored in Nevada or in Idaho or in the state of Washington as well. It presents its own issues, but maybe would help alleviate some of this pressure. I mean, there's only a finite amount of silver that's out there and available to be stored, right?
Yeah, and when we start talking about air freighting silver, you know, it's a tight market when we're putting silver on planes.
Yeah, because it's kind of heavy, right?
Yeah, no, it's a base metal.
Exactly.
It's a copper, right? You know, we've mentioned a little bit, but policy risk. Is Trump pro, in your mind, is he pro structurally, or their policies, are they sort of pro anti-silver 232? It's now officially been labeled, silver's officially been labeled as a critical metal. Look, we're not up there in the sort of most precious critical metals like gallium and neo, but still being labeled a critical metal. What are the implications for silver?
Well, it's interesting. So what that does when any metal is labeled a critical metal, it opens up opportunities for the people who are mining in the United States. And it's not just the United States-based companies. But we don't have a lot of projects in the United States. You know, we have Nevada, we have some portions of Montana, Alaska, of course. California, believe it or not, is starting to come online with some silver projects. So, and we rely on 60% of imports of silver to meet our industrial and our investment needs. So to put a tariff on that would be mind-boggling, but I don't put anything behind any administration. They may not have thought this thing all the way through. I was very encouraged on April 2nd, Liberation Day, when precious metals were taken off the table. And gold has now somehow got other carve-outs and distinctions in the U.S. tariff code. Silver was basically left alone, all right? I mean, I think doré is fine, but right now we're still waiting the results of the 232 investigation. Right.
We're still waiting that, and then USCMA, which is only next year. But, so yeah, I mean, policy risk just seems to overhang all metals, all commodities at the moment, and it makes sense because the U.S. is very much behind the security of commodities required.
I think silver made the list, and look, we lobbied for it, all right, along with some of our member companies and other companies that aren't members. But we feel that silver is a critical mineral. We think that this deficit certainly needs to be taken into consideration. And the fact that we're only producing 40% of our domestic needs in this country. Silver has, for many, many decades, has been used in the military. Small amounts. I mean, there are numbers out there that people put out. They have no idea what they're talking about. There's just no way that a Tomahawk missile has 100 million ounces of silver, or even 100 million ounces of silver. Okay, it has some silver, right, because of the guidance systems, the drones, and so forth. Yes, silver is on the ships, silver is in the planes, but it's not as much as some people like to think. But interestingly, the United States in the 1950s and 60s and up to the early 70s used to report the Department of Defense on how much silver they used, other metals. They stopped doing that, obviously, for national security reasons, so they're not really giving that information out. But it is a critical mineral. But I like the word critical, but I love the word strategic. You know, it's a strategic mineral. Silver is, and That's a buzzword that we like to use, by the way.
Right,
I
right.
can't replace it with the critical mineral designation, but we think it's both critical and strategic.
And strategic. And I mean, we talk about central banks strategically accumulating gold. We get the question in platinum and silver. I mean, maybe not central banks, but other nations. Do you see this regionalization where countries have to sort of up their strategic stockpiles of important metals?
I do. I really do. Last December, Russia announced that they were going to explore acquiring silver through a central bank buying program.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's taken place. I haven't heard if it has. We heard that Saudi Arabia.
Smoke is fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We heard Saudi Arabia took a
they
position in the PSLV or an ETF. That's not the actual physical. They're not storing it there. So I think as time goes on, and obviously gold has benefited quite dearly by the fact of the central bank buying. We would love for them to start buying silver as well. There's just not been any definitive signs of that taking place so far.
Right. You run, you're CEO and president of the Silver Institute. What are some of the initiatives you're working on? What do you think the silver industry or stakeholders in the silver industry should do to keep the industry relevant, to keep it growing? Sort of talk us through more of some of the
So we have about 33, 34 members. We have the leading primary silver miners throughout the world. We're truly international. We're basically in every region. And we also represent the refiners, the end users. We did have some jewelers at one point. But our mission really is to create programs that hopefully at the end of the day will create greater demand for silver.
Right.
We have a relatively small budget when you compare it to other metal industry associations. We have a small staff. We rely a lot on consultants and technical side, writing side, and so forth. But our mission really is to create these programs that will chew up demand.
Yeah.
We put out our World Silver Survey, which many people consider to be the definitive project on silver on a yearly basis. And we also do other reports. I mentioned the report that we did with respect to above ground stocks. We put out another report this year on physical investment, talking about those 4 major countries and the challenges that they may be facing. And in about a week or two, we're going to put out a report on silver's use, not only in solar and the electrification of the world, including vehicles, but also an in-depth look at data centers and AI, because you mentioned earlier, what is the next big thing? And in my opinion, that is it.
Yeah. Oh, it's here.
For silver. It's here.
Okay, great. I think, to wrap things up, I normally sort of end it with the sort of fire round, one-word phrase questions. So, one word to describe who or what has been that's been behind the silver move this year.
I'm going to say one word, right?
One word.
Well,
don't overthink it. It's meant to be a gut.
Okay.
Like first word to your mind.
I'm just going to say investors.
Investors. Is the global silver supply chain, is it destocking or restocking?
At this point, I think it's destocking.
Destocking. At what price, we sort of touched on this, at what price would we see significant silver supply response?
I think we're starting to see it now, but I think anything above 55, which is quite achievable, some say by the end of this year.
Okay, 55. Silver's, the inflation adjusted high for silver is actually about $200, right? Gold's sort of smashed through that. But do you see silver achieving $200 this decade?
I do see it. I see it bumping up, getting into triple digits. I see it could very well happen. Okay. Will it happen tomorrow or next year? I just don't know.
Right. What is one challenge the industry needs to collaborate on?
One of the challenges that face us is sustainability. Okay. And it's a big issue. Yeah. Fortunately, all of our member companies place a high premium on sustainability. Okay. So I would say sustainability. Yeah. The challenge, of course, is that only 30% comes from a primary mine. Right. So you're looking at copper, lead, gold, and zinc. And so that's a challenge. There was an article today in the Financial Times about silver jewelry and how there needs to be a cohesive effort to, like responsible gold,
Right.
but also on the
silver side.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's good points. What is one nascent technology or silver application that you think has upside demand potential?
AI.
AI.
No question. Hands down.
Okay. And then lastly, one word to describe the opportunity in silver.
Robust.
Robust. I love it. Okay, thank you so much for coming on. I think we learned a ton about silver and just...
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I
It's
really
been great.
enjoyed myself, Nikki.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks,
You bet.
Mike.